All right, folks. Jeremy here, partsbreakers.com, Jeeps Unlimited. Just got back from a lovely 10-day vacation in Hawaii. Don't have a lot to complain about. Took my little boy and my wife. My allergies are crazy right now, so if you hear me sniffling in the background, that's all it is. About to show you, I haven't done an update on inventory. Check us out next week. We got a ton of Jeeps that came in. I mean, I had 2 weeks, the week before I left on our vacation, in that 30-day stretch before that, we had 22 Jeeps that came in. I think it was 22 or it's 30. I don't know. It was a lot more than we usually get. I mean, we really take our time with our Jeeps. We part them all the way down nuts and bolts, so we're like an ultra recycler, and I mean that by we do not waste anything on these things. And so because of that, we have a huge yard. We have 7 acres, but we don't really need to have a ton of inventory because we always have stuff, you know. But I mean, I'm not opposed to having inventory. We definitely have the space for it. So that's great news, because the last couple years have been pretty dry on these things. So we've got a lot of YJs in. We've got a handful of TJs and several CJs. This video is actually more in regards to something that's under the hood on this one, but I always like to show kind of what's going on. So just as a little tidbit of information, check out my YouTube channel next week, and we'll be dropping kind of our updated inventory, and which is, like I said, there was over 20 before I left, and then but I've been back for 3 days, and we've had another at least 10 that have come in since then. So it always goes back to that whole notion of do we really need it? We have so many of these, but then there's those moments where you're like, crap, I wish I would have bought every one of them I could have found. And that's really where I've always been, which always leaves the bank account a little bit low, but you know, that's I guess the way of life. So anyway, without further ado, let me show you what I'm about to show you on this one. This is a Laredo, obviously, YJ, right? So it's gonna have a good tub. It's gonna be I would say a low B tub. It doesn't have any rust on it, which is why it's a B tub. So anything that doesn't have rust is always going to be an A or a B. An A, difference between an A and a B for us is going to be A is going to be basically ready to paint or just install, especially high A. Low A's might have minor damage. B's are going to be not major damage, like no collision necessarily, but are going to require a little bit more of an extensive body work. So that is that's what we're looking at on this tub. We got some nice doors, should get a nice frame out of it. But again, I always make these videos with a little bit of a general purpose, and this particular one is a little bit of a rare bird. It's got a 4.2 in it. It was an engine fire, so most of the engine is well, the engine's fine, but I'm not sure the engine's fine, actually doesn't run. So it will core it is what we'll do on this one. But my point is that the harnesses and, you know, the plastic stuff is all gone underneath it, but it wasn't too bad of a fire. You can tell just because the hood's not cooked on it. Yeah, so we'll oh, what am I going? I'm losing my train of thought here. Still on vacation mode, I guess. So it's a 4.2, which is not uncommon, but what is uncommon is a 4.2 with Serpentine. Very, very, very hard to find. And I took this request in several months ago. I'm sure the gentleman that I talked to will be watching this video here in a few days, and he'll agree. These are, I kind of, oh yeah, no problem, and then went out and looked and thought, it's been a while since I looked at these, and yeah, we don't have any, and so I'll go find one. Well, they're not that easy to find. Now, why would you want Serpentine? Well, you can look it up. There's a whole, you know, it just depends on what project you're doing. A lot of guys like to ditch the V-belts just to go to a singular belt, you know, and I think there's a reason for that. They are hard to find, so if you don't need to switch, or your customer doesn't need to switch in this case, you know, V-belt options definitely are more plentiful. There are not a ton of them for some things. So the other thing is in this particular customer, they're dealing with two things. One is going to be power steering, right? And then the other is AC. Now AC can be very tricky on a 4.2 to find it compatible with a 4.2 V-belt. The pulleys, the brackets, there is hard to find. Of course, it's blowing wind right when I start doing this, so that's gonna make the video fun. So let me get behind something here. So anyway, I'll just cut to the chase. 4.2s are easy in some senses, but when you start trying to get things on them that they didn't really produce a lot of them with, AC being one of them, makes them very difficult. YJs, they did a few of them. CJs, they did hardly any of them. And I'm talking V-belt. And when you do a CJ 4.2, you never see serpentine on them. But if you can get a 4.2 from a YJ or somebody that's done on a CJ, then obviously you need more than just a few parts. But and again, I'll show you some of them are in our bin over there, but most of them are under this hood. So okay, so what? Let's see, do I got a hood problem? A little crispy under here. Okay. So what what he's going to get, or what the customer's going to get, is he's going to need the water pump pulley, which we have actually in a bin. So this one will get a nice clean one. He's going to need a crank pulley. Okay, and you're switching to serpentine, so that's going to be swapped over as well. That one looks pretty good actually, but we'll double check and make sure that the molding hasn't come out of it. I do have those pulled, so I'm not worried about that. Okay, so those are your main ones. And then in addition to that, here's your alternator. So you're gonna need an alternator that's set up for serpentine. They look a little goofy on these when they're set up this way, but this is factory. That's probably crispy, so we won't be sending that one, but we'll get another one on that. Or customer, and I think in this case, they probably have their own or can get their own. Those are not too uncommon, okay? And then you're gonna need a slew of brackets over here, okay? And some of them are gonna be for the alternator, and they're shared brackets, meaning that the lower part of these brackets are gonna be on alternator, and upper are gonna be AC if you are indeed installing AC, okay? So there's, I would say in this mix between hardware and brackets, you're probably at 9 or 10 just in this alone. And I'm talking hardware as well. So these bolts are very specific. Pitches are different on these things, especially when they go into these aluminum casting units. You don't want to just throw a bolt in without checking it, because they will pull threads. They do it real easy. And then of course you need your compressor, which is at the top. That clearly was started probably by that battery, as you can see over there. Not that it matters, but anyway. So, like I said, my allergies. So, and then the pump will put a different one, if they need one of those, or they can source that. And then there's and this one's not all here, but I do have a full serpentine belt pump set up in the bin. So you'll get the 2 metal brackets, which are they're here, 1 and 2, and then you'll need the 2 aluminum ones that actually get squished in. And then essentially, if your intake, and again, if you're on a CJ, you need to look at this kind of carefully, because on early CJs, 72 to 79, let's just put it there, okay? These intakes change on these, and sometimes you won't have bosses here, okay? If you have a, what is it, 232, I believe it is. They came in the really early CJ, 70, like when AMC just took over. You're talking 72, 75. Occasionally you'll get those in, or even earlier. Those are not, this is a 258. Those are, I think it's a 232 if I'm not mistaken. And those are even different. It's a different intake. And what's really confusing about those, and we get calls about them all the time, is people want to put power steering on them, which is doable, but it is not as easy. And part of that problem is because everything is reversed. Your alternator's over here, power steering's over here as well. Still, that stays the same, I believe. But everything's backwards on them. So that makes them even more troublesome. So, but in this case, again, just for this customer's purpose, they're gonna get everything here. They're gonna get the pulleys here in the center, and then they'll get the pulleys. We're gonna include a pump, even if they're gonna replace it. And I'm gonna tell you why we do that. And I'm gonna warn the shop here, if I haven't already, but these pulleys, when we go to pull them, and people do this all the time, they often bin the pulley. So we usually try to find something that's got a nice clean pump on it, and we send it as is. And then if the customer wants to do their due diligence and figure out how to pull the pulley, then they can. But we just don't mess with them that way. And then, you know, it is what it is. That's how it is. So they utilize these 2 ears right here that come off the water pump. Okay. And And then, yeah, what you're not seeing in this picture, if you had AC or wanted AC, is you need that bracket, you need the compressor, the lines that go up to the condenser, which sits up in front of the radiator. That's pretty much it in the engine compartment. They essentially have 2 more lines that go back to the lower box. And if you're not familiar, I'll show you just real quick. They are separate units. People are, and this is the same as a CJ as far as this goes for what it looks like. So if it has AC in it, it doesn't run through your heater system. And that's, you know, your heater box is actually down up under there. And that YJ heater box essentially is not a heat, it's an AC box, but it's self-contained. It's all its own unit, and it sits and bolts right up under there. The climate control that you have for your heater, which is right there in the center, is on its own. That's completely different. It's just your heat and your cold air vent or whatever you have, you know, a fresh air vent, I guess it is. So again, you got its own control unit. Everything is self-contained on that. And on a CJ, that would have to be wired in. On a YJ, most of the time the provisions are there in the harness. So this video is kind of more for both again. And again, I'm just going to show you real quick the yard. Appreciate everything. Thank you for your patience, Mike. And this I'll get these out to you if you guys decide you want them. And I'll make sure I round up, you know, make sure all the pulleys are straight and everything like that. None of those pulleys have bearings. Some of the pulleys they make mainly in the 90, Cherokees do them in the earlier years, but in the Wranglers, they didn't start doing them until the later years. The TJs, where you get brackets that have bearings attached, and they're actually kind of a one unit thing, meaning they don't separate. So, but on these particular ones, you're dealing with pulleys that are kind of their own pulley. There's no bearing in them. The bearings are in the water pump, which, you know, the bearings are in the AC compressor, the alternator, and in the pump, the power steering pump. So, okay. All right, questions about anything we're doing out here, anything you're interested in? We're about to do our spring cleanup. We've already got it a little bit started. We're gonna gut the front here shortly, bring everything back. So the next few weeks are gonna be a little hectic, but we'll be still rocking out on the phone. We're bringing another sales guy in, one of my best friends I've known for a long time, super good guy. So if you don't get me on the phone, you'll get him, or my wife even. And yeah, and then again, check us out next week, and we'll get we'll do a Wrangler CJ one, we'll do a Cherokee, and I'll show you everything we've got in new, any of the cool stuff sitting around, and we'll go from there. 303-666-9020. partsbreakers.com is our website. Just for a tidbit there, not a lot of those parts that I just mentioned, especially our rare parts, you're not going to see those listed very often on our website, and it's just really because the demand's so high. We usually already have buyers lined up for that stuff. So if you don't see it, doesn't mean we don't have it. It just means you need to call or email or text, although that number I just gave you is a landline. Basically, get your name on a list if we don't have it in stock, and I'll get you one, okay? And our tubs and frames, I'm going to start getting those stripped down again. We're going to start getting those out here again shortly. So if you're in the East Coast, Midwest, you need a tub or frame, we got some really clean units coming in that have come in, and you'll be happy with what we have on those too. So, all right, thanks, and have a great day.